Star Trek: Strange New Worlds faces one big problem before Season 3 premieres. When Star Trek: Strange New Worlds premiered in 2022, it felt like lightning in a bottle. After years of divisive Trek shows, this prequel centered on Captain Christopher Pike and the USS Enterprise struck a nearly perfect balance between the adventurous, episodic storytelling of the original series and the modern serialized character arcs that audiences have come to expect from prestige television. Season 1 was hailed as one of the best first seasons in Trek history. Season 2 doubled down on fan-favorite characters and crossover experimentation, and suddenly, Strange New Worlds became the franchise's crown jewel. And yet, as Season 3 looms, a shadow hangs over the series. For all the goodwill the show has earned, it now faces one big problem, an unavoidable narrative and tonal challenge that could threaten its trajectory. The balance between fan service and forward momentum is becoming increasingly fragile. The third season of Strange New Worlds must find a way to move boldly forward without collapsing under the weight of nostalgia, continuity, and expectations. Let's break down why this problem exists, how it grew during the first 2 seasons, and what the show must do to solve it before the Season 3 premiere. A prequel with a built-in expiration date. The core of the issue begins with the very premise of Strange New Worlds. Unlike the Next Generation, Voyager, or Discovery, this isn't a blank slate series. Every character on the bridge has a fate already etched into canon. Captain Pike is destined for a tragic accident that leaves him disfigured and confined to a wheelchair. Spock is fated to become Kirk's first officer. Uhura will grow into the communications officer of the original series. Even recurring characters like Nurse Chapel and Dr. M'Benga have limits on their possible futures since canon dictates where and when they can appear. This built-in endpoint means the series has to tread carefully. Too much innovation risks contradicting TOS, while too much reverence risks suffocating creativity. Seasons 1 and 2 largely walk the tightrope well, but as the stakes rise, the cracks are beginning to show. The first hints of trouble in Season 2. Season 2 was widely celebrated for its bold swings, yet it also revealed the dangers of relying too heavily on nostalgia. Take, for instance, the crossover episode, Those Old Scientists, which brought in Lower Decks characters Boimler and Mariner. It was a delight, merging animation and live action in an unprecedented way. But it also highlighted how much of Strange New Worlds' charm now relies on winking at longtime fans rather than carving out its own mythology. The finale, Hegemony, doubled down on this tendency. The Gorn returned as the season's ultimate threat, but their reimagining, presented as horror movie xenomorphs rather than rubber-suited lizards, was divisive among purists. Meanwhile, the cliffhanger put the Enterprise crew in peril in a way that felt less like fresh storytelling and more like a calculated move to echo classic Trek finales. In short, Season 2 began to show signs of the franchise's oldest tension. Is this series truly bold and strange, or is it mostly remixing familiar elements to keep fans satisfied? The stakes for Season 3. This brings us to the big problem facing Strange New Worlds before Season 3 premieres. The show now sits at a crossroads between 3 competing demands. 1. Canon consistency. The show must honor where each character ultimately ends up without contradicting the events of the original series. 2. Fan service pressure. With the enthusiastic response to legacy callbacks, there's pressure to introduce more TOS icons, from Scotty already teased to Bones, Sulu, and Chekhov. 3. Creative independence. To remain compelling, the show must also tell fresh stories that aren't just filling in gaps, but creating new Trek adventures that feel essential on their own. If Season 3 leans too heavily in one direction, it risks alienating a chunk of its audience. Too much canon reverence, and casual viewers will feel boxed out. Too much fan service, and the show becomes predictable. Too much independence, and it risks contradicting the very foundation of Trek. The Gorn problem. Nothing illustrates this dilemma better than the Gorn. The reptilian species first appeared in the TOS episode Arena, where Captain Kirk famously fights one in hand-to-hand combat. But Strange New Worlds has reimagined them as brutal, terrifying predators. In Season 1's Memento Mori and Season 2's Hegemony, they function as existential threats closer to Ridley Scott's xenomorphs than campy 60s villains. This reinvention has divided fans. On one hand, it makes the Gorn a legitimate menace and gives Strange New Worlds its own big bad. On the other, it risks contradicting Kirk's reaction in TOS, where the Gorn encounter felt novel rather than something Starfleet already had a war history with. By choosing to make the Gorn a cornerstone of its mythology, Strange New Worlds has tied its fate to one of Trek's most heated canon debates. Season 3 can either double down on this reinvention, embracing the horror direction fully, or pull back to reconcile with continuity. Either choice risks angering part of the fanbase. The legacy character question. Season 2 ended with the introduction of Scotty, setting up his larger role in Season 3. That makes sense. After all, he's one of the most beloved original crew members. But Scotty's inclusion raises a bigger question. How many legacy characters is too many? So far, the show has featured Spock, Uhura, Chapel, M'Benga, and now Scotty. Rumors abound that Bones, Sulu, and Chekhov could also appear before the show ends. While it's thrilling to see familiar names, there's a danger of Strange New Worlds becoming less about Pike's Enterprise and more about backfilling Kirk's. That undermines the unique identity the show carved out in Season 1, where original characters like Lon Noonien Singh and Hemmer helped define its tone. If too much emphasis shifts to TOS icons, Strange New Worlds risks turning into a checklist of cameos rather than a fresh take on exploration. What Strange New Worlds needs to do. So how does the show solve this problem before Season 3? A few strategies could help. 1. Prioritize Pike's journey. At its core, Strange New Worlds is about a captain who knows his fate and chooses to lead anyway. Season 3 must keep Pike front and center, not as a side character in his own series, but as the emotional heart. 2. Let original characters shine. Alon, Ortegas, and Pelia deserve arcs that are not overshadowed by legacy players. Audiences need reasons to care about these characters beyond their proximity to icons. 3. Balance canon with innovation. Rather than trying to fix canon, the show should embrace ambiguity. Trek history is full of contradictions. Leaning into mystery rather than rigid explanations will keep the show nimble. 4. Be bold with storytelling. And musical episodes, horror riffs, and genre experiments worked because they felt daring. Season 3 must continue that spirit, ensuring the show feels like more than just a prequel box ticker. 5. Plan the endgame early. Whether the show runs 4 seasons or 5, it needs a clear endpoint. Pike's fate, Spock's arc, and the transition to Kirk must be handled with intention, not desperation. Why this problem is actually a good sign. Paradoxically, the fact that Strange New Worlds faces this problem at all is a testament to how successful it's been. Few modern Trek shows have generated this level of anticipation. Fans aren't debating whether to watch, they're debating how the show will continue to thrill them. The tension between nostalgia and innovation has always been part of Star Trek. Every era wrestles with it. The Next Generation had to escape Kirk's shadow. Deep Space Nine had to prove a space,